The Survivors is brought to you by our friends at Schoser Talent and Wellness Solutions. This podcast mentions suicide, mental illness, grief, and loss, and may be triggering for some listeners. So please take care of your mental well-being by pausing or skipping any sections that feel uncomfortable to you. And if you or someone you know is struggling, please call 988 for support. You and I have been apart for
a while.
Yep. Because I went off the grid for a little bit because my daughter was here from out of the country, and we just kind of huddled together as a little family, hugging each other for 2 weeks. And I didn't get on my phone. I didn't do anything. And it was the very best thing in the world for my mental health. But now we're back, and I literally have not seen your face live. That was the longest we've ever gone without seeing each other.
I know, it's kind of scary, right?
I know, right? But we just slid right back in like an old sneaker. So here we are. And you know what, do you know what it is right this minute?
I don't know. Tell me.
It's actually September, and that means it's National Suicide Prevention Month. And we are here to share that together and to talk about all the things that need to be talked about this month and all the other months. And it's that time to just to stop and just to pay attention for a minute, a little bit deeper than we usually do, and to commit to being part of the solution. That's how I feel. And I know that's how you feel.
It is.
Because when you think about all of it, all these awareness months, and there are so many of them, and I do appreciate all of them, especially this one. Awareness is important, but what I'm learning is that awareness without any action to support it does not really accomplish a lot. And in this case, it doesn't really save people's lives. So I thought today we could talk about how preventing suicide goes deeper, way deeper than just knowing all the statistics. Like you and I talk about statistics all the time, but it's so much more than that. It's about building a culture, or in our case, a community, which is what you and I have been doing now for a long time, where compassion and care for each other and for what we're all going through is at the center of that. So does that sound like a conversation that you'd like to have?
It would be a great conversation to have because there's so much that plays into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, awareness itself is like the tip of it all. And when you think about it, like, okay, now I am going to talk statistics for a second because it is relevant in the case of Suicide Prevention Month. 50,000 people, like these statistics blow me away every time I hear them, and I talk about them all the time. 50,000 people die by suicide in the US every year, roughly. That's one person every 11 minutes. That's one of the stats that really hits me. And I know that we've talked about the global statistic a lot over the last couple of seasons, which is that over 700,000 people die by suicide every year around the world, or one every 40 seconds, which again, it's like, I'm not a mathematically oriented person, but there are certain things that, God, they just hit me. That one hits me.
Yeah, I've been following a group on Facebook, and they talk a lot about suicide awareness and people that are grieving from suicide loss and just the connection and the community and really helping to try and prevent more suicides. I feel like sometimes our messages fall on deaf ears, but I want people to realize that, you are loved, wanted, and needed in this world, and the world's a better place because you're here. And no matter how crappy today feels, tomorrow could be way better.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and in my case, that's what it was. As hard as everything was on that Christmas day, life got so much better after I finally got myself into therapy and started really realizing what was important.
Yeah. And that's the thing that you can't see when you're in that state of mind. And you would know this better, having been on the survivor side, in terms of having those ideations and wanting to end your life and going so far as to look up how you were going to do this thing, you would know better than anyone how you were feeling, how desperate you felt, and how alone you probably felt with your wife downstairs
Yeah,
in the same place. Yeah. And it's got to be an awful feeling.
and it was because here's what was going on in my head is I couldn't fix what was going on, and I'm a fixer. I couldn't make those feelings go away no matter what I tried, and I tried everything. But once I made that phone call to 988, everything started to make sense. I will say it again and again. The lady that answered that call that day was the most compassionate person I've ever spoken to, and she helped me see what was going on. But for people out there that have never had those kinds of feelings before, yeah, it's terrifying. I was terrified.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So you saying what you just said makes me think of a point that I think is so important to make this month and in general when we're talking about suicide awareness and prevention is that connection. That I'm thinking about your call to 988. And then after that, I know the story. You reached out, you talked to your wife, you slowly started talking to other people in your community and in your family and so on, and there was a ripple effect, but it was connection. You made connection, and that connection is a form of protection. That's what I think so many people don't necessarily understand, why you and I keep talking over and over and over again about share your story. And okay, maybe you're just not someone who wants to share your story. You don't want to write it. You don't want to go on a podcast. You don't want to talk about it. You don't want to post about it. Okay, that's your prerogative. You don't have to do that. What you owe it to yourself to do, and what you owe it to the people who are close to you to do, is to reach out and connect with people because, and here's the thing, here's the reason why. People who feel that sense of belonging or that connection are significantly less likely to attempt suicide. It's that isolation, it's that loneliness that are the greatest risk factors. And prevention, and you know this because you do this all the time. Like you and I text each other all the time and have open, honest conversations. You just sending a simple text. I know every week you do that with your people just to check in, just to give somebody a lifeline. And what we don't often realize is that those connections that we have with people, even if it's a hello, that might be the only connection somebody gets in a day, but it matters.
It does. Communication is huge. And for the people out there that are extroverts and we all like to throw on our masks and pretend everything's okay, maybe take your mask off. I did. Nothing horrible happened out of it. Actually, I ended up getting better because yeah, I decided to say screw it with the shame and the stigma and feeling weak because I couldn't fix myself and I was tired of feeling the way I was feeling. And so my challenge to everyone out there is take that mask off and let people see you for who you are. As hard as it is, people still want to be able to talk to you. They still want to be able to hug you. They still want to be able to text you. Do it for you. Don't do it for anybody else. Do it for you. Because the worst thing in life is walking around feeling as depressed as I did.
Yeah, well, that's what keeps people silent. It's that stigma. You just talked about it. It's the stigma that keeps people isolated in their own heads. And it's only, I think, in my own experience, when we replace that feeling of judgment with a little bit of empathy, that's when we create spaces where people feel safe enough to come out, safe enough to take off the mask, safe enough to have the conversation, safe enough to be vulnerable. And that's what so much of this is. It's like, I definitely do not want to oversimplify this, especially for somebody who may be listening who is in that really, really bad, isolated headspace. Because I'm sure that at this stage of the game, you and I are hopefully reaching a really wide cross section of people who have either lost people or grieving people or trying to help people, are struggling themselves. So if you're listening and you're not okay, two things that you need to be doing are: number one, reach out to someone, whether it be 988, whether it be a family member, a friend, a coworker, someone somewhere that you trust. And also be vulnerable even when it hurts, because the alternative is not okay. The alternative means you're not okay.
Yes, 100%. And we need it's hard to say this because I've been there. It's hard to come up for air when, like, your head won't stop with all the craziness going on. But know that you're okay. Know that it's okay to let people know what's going on, because we're not mind readers. Your friends, your family, your coworkers, nobody knows what's really going on unless you allow them to come in. Allow people to come in, because your true friends and your family, they're gonna see you for where you're at, and they'll meet you there. For people that are on the other side and you're seeing the downward spiral, just let them know you're there. Let them know that, you're there as a friend, you're there as a caregiver, as a coworker, whoever you are. Just let them know that you're there to, help them out in whatever capacity that they might need. And a lot of times, I'm gonna tell you, we don't know what we need, okay? Because it's all kinda new to us.
And that's important. That's important to acknowledge that when you're not okay, it impacts everything. It impacts your relationships. It impacts, in a lot of cases, your job. It impacts, of course, your mental wellness, your physical wellness. I mean, depression is a heavy, heavy thing that in and of itself can keep you from getting out of bed every day, can keep you from making the connections that you usually make every day. So it becomes so important, especially in the world that we're living in now, where there is so much turmoil and there's so much collective stress. All we ever have to do is turn on the news, and everyone is impacted by what we see and what's happening to us, whether it's politics or whether it's a religious crisis somewhere, or whether it's just navigating the plain old day to day of life that is heavy just by nature in so many cases. Like, we all carry a lot. And when you layer on top of all the other stuff, being emotionally unwell, well, that just is more than enough to send somebody into a spiral. And then here's the thing: when someone is in that headspace alone, and I'm making the argument now for why it's so important to say what's going on in your head. When someone is alone with all of that heaviness and those thoughts, and they're swimming around in that pool of heaviness, that's the only thing they're experiencing. There is nothing to disrupt that cycle. There is nothing to change that narrative. And it's when you talk to people, how many times in your life, God, how many times you and I have been on the phone, we've been talking, and you'll tell me something and you've got something in your head, or I'll tell you something, I have something in my head, and I feel like it's so much bigger, or you feel like it's so much bigger, until you share it with me, or until I share it with you. And then we're both like, oh, well, that's not really that big of a deal, is it?
Right.
And the point I'm making is that it's when we verbalize a lot of the things that are going on in our heads that just keep replaying on these endless little loops. That's when we recognize, like, okay, let's get a little perspective here. Maybe we have somebody else's input here. Maybe we recognize that things are fixable or doable or manageable in a way we didn't when we were locked inside our own head with our thoughts. And so that's why, like, this month, today, in this episode, the rest of this season, into eternity, you and I are going to be saying, talk about how you feel with people, because that is the first step in getting help for yourself or someone else. What if your business could recruit smarter, onboard faster, and support employee wellness all at once? Welcome to Schoser Talent and Wellness Solutions, where people-first strategy meets real results. With over 45 years of combined experience and 16 years specializing in UKG recruiting and onboarding systems, we help small and mid-sized businesses thrive. From the first application to full integration, we streamline your hiring process, reduce time to hire, and deliver seamless onboarding experiences. Our proprietary tools like the Recruiting and Onboarding Health Check and the Employee Mental Wellness Index turn insight into impact. At Schoser, we know that businesses are built on people. That's why we integrate wellness into every solution, promoting mental health, reducing burnout, and creating a culture where talent stays and thrives. Whether you're navigating change, implementing tech, or engaging your team, we tailor every solution to fit your goals. Visit schosersolutions.com today. Let's build a healthier, more productive future, one workplace at a time.
It is, and, believe me, I know how hard it is. It took a call to 988 in order for me to open up, but I'm thankful because I'm alive today, and I get to see, like, a lot of my dreams and hopes coming true, and offer yourself patience and grace, okay? Like, we're all dealing with something, like, just because you're not feeling good in your own headspace, don't do the negative self-talk because it really doesn't help. It just exacerbates what's going on. And if you're standing around someone and they are, saying bad stuff about themselves, like reframe that. So reframe it back to them, but in a more positive tone.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion, and that's powerful. It's like this is a totally different example, but it's like how you can almost trick yourself into going to the gym, for instance. You think, "Oh, it's gonna be such a slog. I don't wanna get out of bed. It's too early. It's too cold. It's too dark, blah, blah, blah." We can give ourselves 1,000 different reasons to not do the thing, but it's when we spin it and say, "I get to do this. I get to do this for myself. I get to have this quiet time. I get to fuel my body. I get to fuel my brain." All you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? It's just more like positive self-talk can be that X factor in making something that was not okay in our brains okay.
It is. And the more you do the positive self talk, the better you feel.
Right.
Something that my therapist taught me is every time I get ready to say something mean to myself, take a second and reframe that as saying something good. It takes a lot of brain power to do that, but it also makes you take a pause
It does.
and really think about what you want to say to yourself. And instead of using you statements, use I statements.
Mm.
I did this today. I'm grateful this. Don't like stand in the mirror and say you suck, okay? Because you don't suck. You're going through a really hard time in your life, probably trying to just make it to that next minute. And I get it. Life gets really lifey sometimes.
It does, and in thinking about what you're saying about how we talk to ourselves, I'll take it one step further and say, when you're in those moments where you wanna be critical of yourself or you wanna bash yourself for something, stop and think, "Would I ever say this to somebody I care about?" You would never say the things to someone else that you would say to yourself. I'm guilty of that. I am for sure guilty of that. It's so easy to look at ourselves and be critical and find fault. And I think with a lot of us, that's where so many of our insecurities and our issues start because we're not compassionate with ourselves when we need to be the most.
Yeah, like when we talk bad to ourselves, it's like sending an angry text because those are the conversations that you would never have face to face with somebody, but you have no problem sending them a text.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
don't do it. Be kind, rewind,
Yeah. Yeah.
like
I like
rethink
that.
it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of what we're talking about feels like We're giving suggestions for how to break cycles here, which I know is what I'm secretly trying to do, and I think you're probably secretly trying to do that too. Like, okay, don't do this thing that we're always used to doing, like disrupt the thought process, disrupt the actions, disrupt the narrative. And the way that we do that is often in very, very small, innocuous ways. And like we already said, one of those ways is by being gentler to ourselves, or maybe prioritizing something that we need because we need it versus giving all of our energy and attention to the people around us. I know I was guilty of that for the longest time, and it had me in a terrible, terrible headspace because I kept putting myself dead last. And I think that that's where so many people run into problems, because all of a sudden now it isn't about you anymore. You've made it about everybody else but you. So what's important to you is no longer a priority. What you need is no longer considered. And people just get caught in this downward spiral because we don't think about ourselves anymore in the ways that we should. We're always so busy asking everybody else, like, how are you? How are you? And then, what do you need? What's going on with you? And those are great things. And I am a big believer that we need to be more of a collectivist society in every way, but especially in this way where we look after each other's wellness. I think it's our obligation. Definitely, it's our obligation. And I know that you agree with that because we've had offline conversations about that. But how often do we ask ourselves, how are we really doing? And how impactful would that be if we really did that on the regular and stopped sitting with everybody else's pain and kind of sat with our own and said, "Oh, I am really not okay right now, and here's why. And here's what I need." And then you go do the thing that you need. Wouldn't that be something, huh?
I think that's easy for people to do that aren't empaths. But if you're an empath, you need to learn to put that shield up and deflect, because your well being is just as important as everybody else's well being. Check in with yourself on a regular basis. I do it at least twice a day. I check in the morning, I check in at night. I should probably try and check in during the middle of the day, but I'm usually a little busy and forget about it. But you're worth having in this world, and your mental health matters. And you may think, like, I can't afford to go see a therapist, I don't know what to do. There are numbers you can call. You can call the 988 suicide and crisis hotline. You can go and find a support group. You People, like-minded people that are going through something similar to what you're going through. It helps. But just know that as a community, we can help lift people up instead of keep bashing them down, so that they can make it to that next minute, next hour, next day.
But it starts with us and how we talk to ourselves and how we treat ourselves and how we consider ourselves. It's the oxygen mask in the airplane again, all over again, over and over again. We cannot be helpful to anyone else if we are not helpful to ourselves and taking care of ourselves. So, all of this is to say that we need to be better at doing two things. Number one, considering ourselves and taking care of ourselves. Those things go hand in hand. And number two, also keeping our eyes out on the people around us. It's important. It's what we need to be doing. Yes, obviously it's suicide prevention month. So we all are a little bit extra this month. But we shouldn't be extra this month. We should be extra all the months. So I do hope that we can just continue this conversation over and over and over again. And I know that you and I will, and I hope everybody else out there will. And so here are some takeaways as we start to wind this conversation down. Take a step. Take one step. If you're listening to this right now and you're not okay, or you're listening to this and you're close to someone who's not okay and you want to help them, either you yourself or encourage your friend, reach out to someone you care about this week. Do it this week. Either check in with yourself and do that inventory and see how you're really doing, or reach out to the person you're worried about. How are they really doing? What do they really need from you? How can you best support yourself or support a friend who might need help? Because if we don't ask the questions, we won't know how to help.
And, it's all about we're all in this together. And I would much rather have somebody reach out to me that is not in a good headspace than be kind of left wondering. So,
Yeah, it's true. And look, here are some more takeaways as we kick off Suicide Prevention Month. It is, again, our obligation to look after the people around us, and we do that in lots of different ways nowadays. We can do it with a text, we can do it with a phone call, we can do it by saying, "Hey, let's go for a walk, let's get coffee, let's get dinner, let's do a thing together." But there are so many other ways that the world we live in allows us to kind of globally do our part in a very easy way. Post about the 988 Crisis Lifeline. If you have any kind of social media whatsoever, just post the number and say, if you're struggling, call 988, period. Hit post. That's all you need to do. Go to resources like National Alliance on Mental Illness or the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention or Samaritans. You can go to my platform, the Help Hub. Go to thehelphub.co to find a humongous directory of crisis support tools and hotlines and resources, and share that. Share all of those platforms and organizations, because you never know who will see it at exactly the right time and need one of the resources that you're sharing. And last thing, last kind of call to action. Make it personal. If you're struggling, take one step. Look what G did. G was struggling. G took one step. She picked up the phone, called 988, and maybe you need to call a friend or a family member or a different helpline, or you need to call a therapist for the first time. Make it personal and take a step for yourself.
it, I, I'm telling you, your life will be much better with that step. I was afraid when I made that call. My hand was shaking so bad, but at the same time, I was really tired of feeling the way I was feeling.
Yeah, and when you think about it, I mean, I don't know if I've ever asked you how long that phone call was, because I know they range.
Uh, a little over a hour and a half.
Okay, all right. So an hour and a half you invested in yourself. An hour and a half changed the course of the rest of your life. Not overnight, not in a day or a week or maybe even a month.
No, more like 2 years.
Yeah, but still, but it shifted, right? That was the moment. That was the thing. So maybe it's a single conversation with a friend. Maybe it's a single conversation on a lifeline. Maybe it's a single post that you see some random person on Instagram or TikTok post that has information that resonates with you. That most often can be the catalyst. That can be the thing that changes things. And so here's the message. And my final thoughts. Suicide prevention, that's what we're talking about. Suicide prevention is not just about a single day or a month or a campaign. It's about all of these choices that we make every single solitary day to connect to people who we need to connect with or who need us, to care about other people, to be compassionate, because every single one of us has the responsibility to be part of the solution. And we can fix it.
We can. Baby steps. Just remember baby steps. Nothing got changed in a day,
Right.
but baby steps.
And baby steps, forward motion is still forward motion.
It is.
Indeed. Indeed, it is. I'm really glad we had this conversation. I'm grateful that we are in a position to be able to talk about these things in a place where hopefully others will listen and others will feel what we feel when we talk about it. So I really hope that the people who need to hear this are hearing it.
And I'll see you next week.
I'll see you next week, and I'll love you just as much next week as I do right now.
Yes, ma'am. Have a good one.
I will.
Bye.
I'll see you soon.
Thanks for joining us on The Survivors. Remember, no matter how tough things feel, you are enough, and the world needs you just the way you are. You're not alone in this journey. There's a community here, and every step forward counts. We're so grateful you took the time to listen, and we hope you'll take one day at a time. Just know there's always more light ahead.
Thanks for being here, friends. Just remember, help is out there in so many different places. So if you or someone you know is struggling, please call 988 and a trained crisis counselor like me will be there to help. You can also find an inclusive and comprehensive directory of mental health resources, tools, and content at thehelphub.co. Just remember that help is always just a call or a click away. We'll catch you next week. In the meantime, keep surviving.